Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. And live I am actually here in Philadelphia at a ConnectWise user group, actually, which is nice to finally be back after a couple of years of no in-person events on the kind of like more regional user groups. And they are back, which is nice. It's actually a pretty good feeling. See some faces that I haven't seen before in a little while, which is always good times. So carved myself out a little place here, and the world has not stopped. We continue to get some interesting things that pop out here and there. I see Darren's here. I think Darren's in Chicago. Not mistaken.
Yeah, I am. I am in Chicago at a PAX 8 mission briefing. It's probably too loud where I am. Let me move here, but yeah, hold on one second.
In-person events, guys. Remember, they're a thing. Hope everybody starts to get back into the swing of things. So I don't believe I have a co-partner today on today's session, but that's okay. Plenty to talk about. You there, Darren?
Yeah. So hold on. I just moved to another room. I have to say, it's I didn't know what the turnout would be here, but it is. I mean, it's a full room, and people are very engaged, and yeah, it's good. Good to see. Chicago happens to be beautiful right now. I will say the weather is perfect, and yeah, people are out and about, and it's great.
Sure, that's awesome. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that people popped out to that event, and very happy to see that. People are a little bit more adventurous these days. So let me do some housekeeping that we usually do, right? Get that out of the way, and then we can go into the news of the day. Believe it or not, just getting. Where's that sucker? Used to have a little mouse here, but I guess I lost it. All right, so just give me a second. All right. So other than me having 30,000 tabs open, second. There it is. Look at this thing. Pretty neat. Kind of pop it open and it becomes a mouse. Otherwise it's flat. It's kind of doesn't take as much space in your bag. Gotta love that. Little Surface mouse there. Awesome. Easy for traveling. All right. Some just general housekeeping that we normally do. Some general housekeeping that we normally do in the beginning of these sessions. So mspinitiative.com. This session and every other sessions will be found under the sessions tab in podcast and video format. Keep your eyes on the MSP community block parties. Again, 3 scheduled so far this year. And then right now what's going on is the Channel Strong Tour. And the next one is coming up next week, right? So this time next week, the tour will be happening. And we'll be in Chicago, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Indianapolis, Lexington, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're interested in popping out or you're in one of those areas, go to mspinitiative.com, click on Channel Strong Tour, throw your name into the form, and we'll make sure you get an invite if you're an MSP. So that is the housekeeping. So to open up today's session was something that was actually happening in the middle of last week as we were talking about a few different things. Our friends from Threat Locker, one of Darren's favorite people. Sorry for singling you out there, Darren.
No, I listen. I'm not a public. I think it's a great security tool that people should be using or using something equivalent in this landscape. I mean, I can't. Yeah, I'm happy to have it.
Yes. So last week, Threat Locker put out this alert, right? I think we talked about it a little bit. Let me share my screen. So they put out an alert saying that they were seeing ransomware incidents coming from MSP tools, specifically when it came from BCD edit to bypass security software. And, obviously their tool does something other tools don't, and vice versa. But basically, kind of put this out there saying, hey, there's a problem. Everybody should pay attention. this, that, and the other. But then they kind of maybe caused a stir because the other companies in the space, I know a lot of people are fond of Huntress and Blackpoint, and a lot of the other guys out there kind of came together and said, nothing to see here. We're not seeing this attack, and the tools seem to be fine. Threat Locker seemed to indicate that this was a way to, the MSP tools were being used to kind of do this bypass. And all the other guys said, hey, we appreciate the heads up, but unlike the Kaseya events of last year, nobody else saw that this was a problem. So there was this kind of pushback, right, from the rest of the companies in the industry. They had similar articles put out where they said last year, and kind of like, what was it, July 4th weekend, all these security companies that a lot of people would consider, competing companies kind of came together, were sharing information, trying to figure out what was going on. And this time, like the rest of the guys that, kind of said, nothing to see here. You kind of had these guys out kind of pushing this message. So Darren, did you hear about all of this? What are your thoughts, since I kind of picked you out of the puzzle? We'll hear what everybody else has to say.
No, I mean, I heard about it, and honestly, I have not spent the time or read enough about the, we did do the recommended, I believe they recommended some adjustments be made, and we did that, and that's the extent of it for me to comment on, right now. And I hopefully it wasn't just a way to get, media attention, so to speak, because that would not be, cool. But I can't pass judgment on it one way or the other. So
Sure. So this is the
Yeah,
follow-up.
I saw that email. That was kind of interesting, and I was wondering, is that something that was particular to their tools, or is this something that you could do in your system in general for stuff? So I did see that article here, and I guess it's like Captain Obvious. I mean, yeah, we'll make sure that people can't get into the tools that shouldn't have permission to get into it. That didn't seem like anything that was like brand new news to me.
Yeah. So it definitely created a stir, right? Because on Friday, people were like, kind of like, the sky's falling. What do we do? What do we do? But it seems like even Kaseya is one of the companies that came out and said, nope, not really seeing this.
Yeah.
So I guess the feeling here is, I mean, better to be safe than sorry, even if it was potentially like a false positive, or, what are the thoughts here? Because obviously every company has their own notification track. We kind of talked about notifications last week, right? What's the best way to let people know what's going on? Well, the media and PR is one of those. Obviously want to make sure that we're not pressing the red button or the alarm before we need, but I guess you're going to get some of that if you think there's a problem. Better be safe than sorry. Is that the feeling out there? Keith Nelson?
I think it's a matter of who to trust. I mean, you're sitting there, it's tough to say one person's trying to sell you extra protection. Another vendor purportedly had a breach before that they knew about and didn't disclose it. So now when they say we don't see anything, I go like, do I trust you? I have no skin in the game on either one of them, but I'm going like, I don't know what's fodder or dishonesty, or, is the message simply they're becoming a target and you need to look at locking everything down? There's someone in the industry that people say is a industry leader or that says we're going to get rid of all RMMs. We're not going to remote anything. And so there's all kinds of extremes going on. What concerns me a little bit is these things get legs and get down to, client base who starts asking questions, as they should. It's their network, I get it. But, you start getting some concerns that may force people that aren't technical to make bad decisions. And
Sure.
So, and then to see it bickering back and forth, it became a war. I mean, it wasn't like, let's digest it.
I hate to bring it up, but it almost kind of, I mean, in my mind, like the last time, I mean, not exactly the same, but it kind of reminds me of the old Arnie Fred back and forth, right?
Yeah, and so now you're going like, do we have any experts in this field, right? Or are we all just salespeople? And
Yeah.
I found it. I didn't like the fodder how it went back and forth. I think there is more professional ways to remember that some of this is forward facing. So we have to be clear, right? It wasn't just an internal argument. It's like keep your family fights behind your closed doors, and I don't think we're
Yeah.
doing that.
No, I get it. I mean, there's definitely a fine line, right? I mean, of what's super marketing versus what's actually helpful to the industry. So
And on the
definitely,
surface, that some of the stuff he was saying is true, and Threat Locker has some smart people that work there. I'm just not sure how it became a headline and sensationalized served his messaging the best.
yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be very, very, very kid gloves on this, right? To make sure that you're not, kind of hitting that button unless you absolutely need to. But they say they did. They say they're going to follow up with all the documentation behind this. So, hey, listen, if that helps the industry, then great. It's another thing you can lock down.
So is the message for this to go back and read The Little Boy Who Cried Wolf?
I'll also, yeah, I'm very curious now. I've been the last, since that came out, I've been crazy busy. So I haven't taken a good enough look, but I'm very curious. So I will also reach out to them and see what they can provide. So
Sure.
I have to run, guys. Sorry, but
All right.
enjoy
Enjoy Chicago there, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yep. Bye.
The next one that I wanted to point out came out just yesterday, as we see Microsoft continuing to kind of spread their wings. So Microsoft themselves have now launched a cybersecurity service where basically they're saying for what was the price point I saw in this article, for $3 per month per person. So among new products being launched, Microsoft Defender experts for hunting. It will involve Microsoft engineers flagging issues they find in devices, 365 software, cloud applications, and identity programs for $3 per person per month. The launch will put Microsoft in more direct competition with pure play security software companies like CrowdStrike. And then they also say that there's also a Microsoft Defender for XDR, which costs $14 per person per month. There's more labor-intensive service. And then the third offering is Microsoft Security Services for Enterprise, which includes a broader set of people-driven services. Okay. So, obviously that's not necessarily directly competing with MSPs, but definitely MSSPs. And if you're already utilizing the majority of the Microsoft stack, does it make sense to now kind of put all your, put more eggs in that basket and have Microsoft now start to do some of the security services that some of the other companies that we're familiar with may already be doing? What do you guys think?
Well, to me, security is I've said it 1,000 times, I'm a broken record. We think we wear red capes and we think we're superheroes and we're going to solve everything with our magic wand. The fact is, especially when you start talking about security hygiene, there's a lot of process and culture in that that Microsoft will never ever deliver. They're too big. They will. So could it become a tool set in ours, in what we present? Possibly. I haven't looked at it. My always concern with Microsoft is a lot of times they come out with something that isn't their. I mean, I remember Microsoft phones were the hot thing, right? And so it's hard to bet when they come out of the gate because you're going like, is this something I'm going to implement, learn, and then they've decided they're bored with this. As far as being a security provider, I'm going like, no, there's too much training. There's too much explaining. There's too much culture change. It's just not something I think they fit in.
To me, I'm still here, George. I have 2 more minutes. So I have to say, you know, as we've talked about, I think if there's a fundamental kind of conflict in that we're basically security, often comes down to protecting Microsoft operating system and Microsoft, you know, hosted solutions. And now Microsoft saying, well, hey, you know, you should check this box and we're going to secure it better. And I don't know. To me, I find it, you know, I understand because it's an article also on CNBC, maybe it was the same one or one I just recently saw that, you know, security is their biggest growth driver now over the next few quarters. And it's concerning for the reasons we talked about. So not thrilled about it.
Yeah, and I don't see how you bite off bits and pieces. I guess kind of what, you know, I don't see how Microsoft says, we fit here, but we don't fit there. You're not big enough for us to handle here. And I think there's a huge service delivery. I mean, that's something I'm on all the time. I mean, I think it's about our service delivery. It's about our process engineering and re-engineering. It's about our fitting in with cultures and so on. And I don't consider them a threat, and I'm not even sure I consider them an option yet.
On the other side of the coin, there's a lot of pure play Microsoft players, and this enhances their ability to say that they can stay pure play Microsoft, right? So it gives them, you know, at a tier 1 level, fully committed to the Microsoft stack. It just gives them that ability to say we're 100% Microsoft shop, and we can continue. Conversely, you know, security is about layers, right? And it's not always about one solution or one vendor solution. It might be several stacked together, doing different things at different layers or different parts, you know, of the infrastructure, whether it's an internal or external. So it'll be interesting to see how people align behind that to say, am I going to dump, you know, with Defender and advanced pieces of Microsoft 365 out at that E5 side to see if Defender coupled up with some of these security services, does it provide something that somebody else isn't providing? You know, until some people get out there and really start using and talking about it, it's probably a wait and see. And it's probably a wait and see for Microsoft to see how far they'll go with it. But I think at this point, Microsoft is really committing themselves with Lighthouse and Intune and many other products to becoming a true security partner in the marketplace. And I don't think they're going to take their fingers or their feet off the gas to see if they can overcome, because they are the money giant, right? They do have the resources to buy the accounts. So, you know, don't be surprised if they start making very lucrative offers to give you product to get you hooked. And then once you're embedded and they're embedded, it's hard to untangle.
Well, that's always been the bigger concern, right? Is Microsoft, you know, and we the name's interchangeable. First it was Dell, then it was the telco carriers. Is Microsoft now, you know, put themselves in a position where, you know, they're taking these customers direct, which actually brings up another point. I was helping somebody with a small project, like a family friend. They wanted to roll out this solution. I said, hey, let's not put a traditional server in. Let's just go straight to the cloud with Azure. Just small deployment, right? Six virtual desktops and maybe an app server. And first of all, I want to give Tony and the team over at Nerdio a lot of kudos and cred. Their app's pretty cool, and it makes like probably 8 to 10 hours of trying to figure out all the complexity of Azure into like an hour or two of a little bit of a guided setup, which was cool. So kudos to them and what they've been doing over there. But at the end of the day, like now you can deploy a domain controller serverless, right? It's called AADS. And, you know, at the end of the day, if your virtual workstations are there, your virtual servers there, assuming you have some sort of application that's server driven, in this case there was, and then you tie in M365 SKUs instead of the regular business standard business premium, you do the M365 business standard business premium, or M1, M3, M5 instead of E1, E3, E5. Now all of a sudden it kind of turns into a almost turnkey. It's definitely not 100% turnkey. There's steps, but to that point, like with the advent of the cloud PC SKUs for Microsoft with 365, you could literally take an entire infrastructure, go straight Microsoft, and at that point, Pete, they have your customer.
Right.
You're on Microsoft.
Yeah, you're on Microsoft, and then the new NCE comes along for security, right? Where now all of a sudden it's like, well, if you're thinking that you're going to make your money on selling Microsoft, you're in the wrong business. You got to add value. Well, they keep eroding the value of the platform, right? Using their platform.
I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to say not only they're potentially eroding the value of just reselling the Microsoft products with some sort of margin, they're also, and I guess they're not necessarily enforcing the rules, from what I can tell, to somebody buying direct from Microsoft as somebody buying indirect through a partner or a distributor. And case in point, back to this kind of family friend project on the side that I've been working on. The guy went after NCE was started. He started a brand new account, started a brand new domain. He had a brand new licenses. So he's under NCE. They had the option, start a trial, month to month, or 1 year or 3 year, right? Those are the 4 options. He did a 1 year. He added E3 licenses. And I'm like, hey, if you want to do this Azure thing, you got to switch to the M365 licenses. So we got to see if there's a problem. So, we log in, we put in a ticket with Microsoft billing, we get a call, and they're like, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and do it. No problem. No, even though you're under a 1 year term, no problem. You go do whatever you need to do. And there was really no fight, no muss, no fuss. And I'm like, it just seems like the direct experience is a lot more different than what you see, going through the indirect or side right now. And I don't know if that's just because we're in a gray period, but NCE is definitely in there. It was a brand new account, wasn't grandfathered. They're not still under the old rules. Why was it so easy then, if this is the new NCE, this is the new program, for them to just say, yep, you're good, go do whatever you need to do, and no harm, no penalty, no nothing.
So what do you see as the next opportunity for us to bring value? I mean, a lot of times architecting the systems was a big provider of value that we brought. So George, give me your opinion on what do you see as the next value provider?
So this story actually fits perfectly into your question, Brent. So this guy, he's a smart guy. He did a lot of Googling. He talked to other practitioners in his field, and he's like, all right, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. I was told this was going to work. And I'm like, man, you maybe got 30% of it right, and 70% of it was not right. It's discombobulated. He's like, oh, I want to do VPNs, but I'm going to go total SASE, serverless. I'm going to do perimeter 81. I'm going to do Azure. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm like, your application doesn't, like, the core application that runs your business won't work like that. Like, you can't do that. He's like, oh, I called the cable company. I got a 1 gig connection. You're just going to do this server, this new, kind of SaaS VPN. And I'm like, yeah, the application, that you're working with doesn't work like that. It needs to submit TCP/IP over a VPN in front of it. It doesn't have the ability to do, a software-based VPN like you think. And by the way, Azure has a VPN built into it. Are you doubling up, like this, that, and the other? And he really got a lot of conflicting information that in his head, when he put it together, everyone said, it's going to work, it's going to work, it's going to work. And I'm like, that's not going to work. And this guy was just trying to self-manage his IT project, and he has no clue.
Well,
where was he getting all that it's going to work from?
What's that?
Where was he getting all the it's going to work from?
Every vendor that he talked to, he called up the direct sales line. He talked, and after talking to other people that are in his line of work, right? And they're like, oh yeah, you can do this, you can do that. And then all of a sudden, everybody's an IT guy, right? And then they call up the vendors, right? So he calls up a Microsoft, or he calls up a Perimeter 81, or he calls up his line of business app vendor. And he's like, oh yeah, we can do this, we can do that, this. And then it's like, I don't know who, where did you get, and I know that if you don't put the exact requirements out and you're talking to somebody technical, they can't, they're going to tell you, with the little bit of information you provided, unless they dig for more data, they're going to say, yeah, that sounds like it can work. And then it's like, let's try. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's try causes time, causes money, and then ultimately at the end of the day, everybody wants everything yesterday. And it's like, your project's never going to get to a workable point. I'm going to spend more time unwinding what you are trying to do than actually putting a solution in for you.
You know, I'm going to give you a story I tell clients all the time. It's my koi pond story. I definitely know how to take care of koi. I definitely could go out there and scrub algae off rocks. I definitely can get on all the um, boards and become a koi pond genius if I so decided. However, I'd rather stick to my core competencies and do my computer stuff and let the pond guy come once a month. It's the same thing with what we do. Eventually, your friend probably would have gotten to the right place. Eventually. He was 30% there already. Give him 3 more months, he'd be 90 and it'd be good. However, in the interim, he's not doing his core job. It's taking away from his delivery of his core product. And then you start looking at and you go, it scales like computer security when we go back to the Microsoft example. It scales for me to learn to navigate that for 20 customers. It doesn't scale really well for you to learn that just for your 5-10 person business. So the delivery doesn't scale well. And so, like I said, my pond guy he comes up to me and says, here's the new type of pump and everything is. I didn't even know about it. You know why he knows about it? That's his business. And that's what I think we have to focus on. I'll keep you in your lane. You can I'll stay in my lane. And where we overlap, we'll work together. So I feed my fish every day. I don't pay the guy to come to feed them, but everything else, done. And it's done right. So
I think the reality is like, listen, everybody, there's a lot of information out there, right? I mean, at your fingertips. The problem is that you don't know what you don't know, right? To your point, Keith, if he didn't understand how to articulate his end game when he's talking with everybody in the middle of the chain of people he's talking to in order to figure out whether this works, he's giving incomplete information and he's getting incomplete information back. And so like, this is the challenge now, right? With all of these vendors. And, I guess this has always been the challenge. All these vendors with the direct sales force who would just take any phone call from anybody off the street and say, yeah, sure, let's try it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. You don't even know what you're getting into yet, right? And so there's a lot of, pushback, right? Where it's like, guys, come on, like, please don't tell this guy something that's not true. Like, you need to get on a conference call. You need to explain the big picture. And like, you'll find out that all of a sudden, all these nouveau, just click, point and go guys, it really doesn't work that way every time. There's scenarios where it probably would have worked okay. But in this case, it was not the right thing to do.
And look from the vendor's perspective too. How much time can he spend educating a guy to do one project? When he can go educate me or anyone else on this call to do 10 projects.
Well, that's the old adage though, Keith, time is money, right? So why are you hiring a professional like yourself to come in and do something for me? Because you've got that experience, you've done that. And we all run into the small business owner that's like, yeah, but I'm going to challenge that, right? So you do this piece, I'll do this piece. And that's where you say now most mature MSPs or IT companies, right? ITPs are going to say, no, if we're not doing it, then we're not going to do the job. And they'll walk away from it before they'll take that because they just know the mess that they're going to get into. And that's the maturity of their firm. But you also know there's that, and I use it loosely, but I'll just rephrase it to a one to 3 person shop. And they're hungry for the business. They're trying to grow their revenue. So they'll take anything that comes through the door. And whether they have experience in it or not, they're good relationship sellers and they'll sell on the relationship personal side. I can do it for you. I can take care of it. And that's where everything goes sour and runs amok. But in the end, I think if we go back to your original question, George, or back to the original question of where was it Brian that said it maybe? Where do you hear value? What's your opinion on it? There's still room for you to be a consultative person as a project manager. And so they're still going to need somebody to project manage all of these disparate tool sets that are going to come together. And even if it's Microsoft, bet your dollars that it's a product that they bought and then they put the Microsoft brand on, right? that they folded in. So it's not going to be your standard Microsoft product. It's going to have a different set of rules and learning and curves and specialties. And that's where you're still going to come in, that consultative person with that expertise to bring the pieces together and manage the pieces that so many others can't.
By the way, I always like to say, I'm a belly to belly sales guy. I'm not the new wave send out. And I say, you know how most people learn?
By doing.
From mistakes. So your choice is to make the mistakes or learn from the mistakes I made on someone else's, not in your environment, somewhere
That's
else.
a great point. That's a great point.
And so mistakes will be made. I've just done them before. I'm an expert at making mistakes. That's how I learned.
And you'll make the same mistake just further on down the line in some project somewhere, something gets overlooked or didn't get provisioned right or something, and you get caught in that quagmire from somebody else's not following best practices, right?
And by the way, we've all relied on technical advice from Microsoft or Dell that has proven to be incorrect. What I tell the businesses, I said, remember, even the IRS says don't take my advice. Remember, they came out and said that a few years ago, where they said if you call us up and we give you advice, verify it with someone else. That's something your business owners can relate to. You can't even go to the source and get good advice. Same as there's no different in our business. You're just getting a dude on the phone that made his whole goal in life may be hanging up on you and jumping on, MSP Initiative so he can talk to George.
Or just running through the calls, because that's what the KPI is to see how many calls you can do in an hour. And that's what's going to determine your bonus or something like that. It has nothing to do with the quality of the words that come out of your mouth. It's just how fast can you switch from one to the other, because that's what the ivory tower is looking for.
I'm works faster, better, cheaper. Sign up here. Unfortunately, that's not even in our industry problem, right? That's in every industry problem.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. I was actually right before I jumped on this session, I was talking to a few people around the table at lunch here at this ConnectWise user group. And, it's funny, right? I kind of call it the pre-pandemic theory and the post-pandemic theory. Pre-pandemic theory was everybody who needed an MSP already has an MSP. And the only way to get more customers is to steal them away from other people, right? Post-pandemic theory is, man, so all these businesses closed, all these new businesses came up during the pandemic, and now we're kind of on the other side of it, hopefully, and never want to talk about it again, but I'm sure that'll be the case. And now all of a sudden, a lot of MSPs are saying they're signing up end users who have never worked with an IT services or managed services company before. So like, how does that all fit with all of these, kind of money men coming into the industry, kind of buying up all these MSPs, right? I mean, so, like, I don't know if it's 80,000, 100,000, 120,000, I guess, depending on who you talk to, it's like number of MSPs out there, right? But, if there's 400 transactions a year of MSPs being acquired, but there's still 100,000, the delta of the balance of the 100,000 out there. And then you have all of these new businesses. We always talk about the bottom of MSP land, right? Internal IT guys that break out to start their own business. And then people who sell their IT company, merge their IT company, go back to work somewhere else. Same happens with small businesses in general, right? Businesses close, new businesses start. Those people need help, just like the guy I was talking about earlier. So I believe, I would love to hear everybody's opinion. I believe there's a lot of business out there. When you talk about the total addressable market, obviously things have changed, but going into the pandemic was like half the US economy was small businesses. And then like how many of those actually had an MSP? Probably single digits. Probably the total amount of small businesses out there versus the amount of small businesses that are working with an IT services or managed services company was probably this much. So I think there's a lot of new business out there, sub 500 employees. I'd even say sub 100 employees that, are probably companies that maybe didn't even exist before the pandemic, or, things happened during the last 24 months. And now there's all new potential clientele out there. What do you guys think? What are you seeing?
There's
You know,
something
I
else
think
in the
that
news. One of the highest officers of Apple just resigned because Apple says you got to come to work 3 days a week. To react to that, it was Facebook, Twitter, I've had ones said, okay, we're not going to make the rule that people have to come back to work. So that's a new support dynamic that's out there now because that will slow down eventually. Someone's going to win the do employees have to work or not work wars. And then the next thing is, I think your figures are great. And I think one of the things we miss out is people are now looking for qualified, experienced IT providers. And I think there's a lot of business that'll flow as insurance gets involved, risk assessments get involved, and people say, you've been a nice guy for 20 years, but you really can't protect my network or meet the security requirements demanded by compliance, the state, who I do business with as CMMC spreads out, or to keep me insured.
So I'll give you some interesting thoughts for comment here, George. So, you know, as a marketing company for MSPs, we do a lot of end user marketing. So we see a lot of add, subtract type things. Now, what we've seen and what is very common now is we are seeing in the lists of MSPs an attrition of their pre-midpoint COVID lists of companies that have gone out of business because they couldn't survive or pay back debt because they were so deep they couldn't spool back up because they didn't have the resources. That number seems to be at about 17% of the lists. It's a pretty high number if you think about it, attrition of a company. We're seeing about 35% attrition of people leaving companies, non-existent email addresses to the 30% of their list over a 4 to 6 month period.
Wow.
Pre-pandemic, we counted on when we would buy a list or we would acquire building their list, scrubbing their list, we probably had non-existent of the 10 to 15%. So it's pretty good. And the small business exit going out of business due to money or resources was probably down in the 5% or under. However, we're also seeing about a 20% growth in new small businesses opening from people that were attrition. So if we don't delete the name and we put it in and now all of a sudden, and they say, yeah, I used to work for so-and-so company. We're seeing people coming out of that used to work for one of those companies that went out and start their own venture. And those are the new businesses that you're starting to see pop up as young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs.
Wow. Good.
So-
Okay. Real numbers here, folks. What are your thoughts? Are you seeing this in all of your businesses? Brent, what about you?
Oh, specifically what now?
Are you when you're going out to prospect, are you finding a lot of new companies have popped up in your area that didn't exist pre-pandemic, and vice versa? How does that offset the companies that used to exist that maybe don't exist anymore?
Something that I am seeing is a lot of people are realizing the viability of not having a lot of physical infrastructure. You know, a large building. You know, I personally see it. You got to have some kind of a physical location for a business to receive, you know, and whatnot, unless you want to, you know, be advertising your home address or something like that for things. That's the thing that I see. Now, I see a lot of also, you know, you mentioned, oh my gosh, you know, maybe even sub 100 people. I'm going to throw it even a lot further, George. I've got 110 businesses in our little corner. Our business park has got 110 businesses. I don't think one of them has got more than 10 people working in there. And there's a lot of them that are construction businesses that I know they're making, well over $1 million a year, but they don't have a lot of employees for things. So they need a place to park the trucks, but the employees, for heaven's sakes, well, you don't need somebody to answer the phone sitting in the office. A lot of times you don't need anybody doing the billing from inside the office, and those are some of the things that I've seen is people opening up prior to this, people like, no, there's no way we could ever have people working from home. And now I feel like there's a lot of these smaller pieces are asking them if that's a possibility to go through and to do, offering it as a benefit.
Yeah,
So,
it was interesting. Like even all along the Channel Strong tour, we've just had so many of them since August of 2020. A lot of the MSPs that host us, they haven't been in the office in a really long time. Even now, even off the most recent one, right? We've had 1 or 2 stops where all the employees came in for the Channel Strong event at their parking lot, but in reality, their offices have been pretty empty for quite some time. So, to your point, I do believe that, a lot of companies don't need, like, I know that, there's the shared office spaces and all this stuff, or, the mailbox or whatever. But, at the end of the day, it just comes down to, it's very easy to start a business, viable or not, right? People can, American dream, right? Give you the shot. And I do believe that there's a lot of new potential MSP prospects that didn't exist 24 months ago that exist now. I really do believe that. And just by talking to the people here today in person, I think that they are starting to come around to the idea that they don't have to wait for, like they're not, hey, when's your contract up? I'll call, I'll talk to you 6 months before, like before. I think that there are, net new prospects out there that have never worked with an MSP before, that are maybe not the size that you want them to be at, but maybe somebody that could grow to that size. And a lot of these, kind of new companies have popped up. Pete, I don't know, how, I'm sure every company that you're consulting with from an MSP perspective is different, but, and I don't know how many new appointments per month they generate on average and all that other jazz, but, I would think that some of these newer companies, that 20% that you were talking about, are probably sub 25 people.
I would agree with you, and I would also agree with Brent that the predominant amount of them are probably facility less. They are going right to the cloud. They don't want to see a server. It's just storage in the cloud. It's login in the cloud. It's whatever device I can buy. I'm not worried about whether it's my iPad, my phone, Chromebook, a full Windows tablet or device. They don't care. They just want to connect and get their services. And so if they can get that and they can get it out of the cloud, they really don't care. And that shipping address is less and less prominent because most of them are having a direct ship to the client and doing configurations on site. Where I know back when I was an MSP back in the day, I never wanted my guys doing stuff on site if they didn't have to, because I was afraid of things getting screwed up and not having the tool sets or the bandwidth to download patches, or having the client standing over their shoulder and a perception of, why am I paying you all these dollars if you can't make this happen? They just ship direct to site and then they push an image down and that's it. It's here it is. And if everything's in the cloud, I don't even need to push an image down anymore. Blow out Windows or whatever the OS is and give me a browser, right? Pretty much.
I was talking about this from my perspective, and I was thinking about this. My wife works for Panasonic, the avionics department. These are the guys that put Wi-Fi on the jets. Okay, pre-pandemic, they had 8 buildings in Irvine. 8. Today, they have 1.
Wow.
So it's just the only building that's left is the people that where they actually are assembling the antennas. All the other people who are doing the in-flight entertainment, the programming, the office stuff, they're all gone. They are all working from home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everybody is seeing that. However, it doesn't translate to every single aspect of every business. I sure hope that people aren't assembling, a Wi-Fi antenna that goes on a jet in their garage, or something like that. But
unless you're Pete Unless you're Pete who's trying to put up the Starlink on the side
It's
of the
up,
house.
baby. It's up, and it's awesome. It rocks.
Awesome. Wow. Let's hear about it. 10 out of 10
The-
score. All right.
I gotta say, at first it wasn't coming up, and it was because the router had beta code on it. So it took about 8 hours, and once the beta code came down and reflashed and rebooted, it's like boom, plug and play.
Wow. Starlink internet, baby.
So we have our fiber to the house now, to our house office, right, headquarters. And by the way, we've been operating almost for 15 years come June as a 100% remote organization. So we're one of those firms that started in the cloud and lives in the cloud, right? But came right up yesterday. We had a Peloton bike delivered, and Denise plugged it in, and she's like, "Yep, boom, right on, super fast, kicked right in."
Got the Peloton, you got the Starlink. I mean, you're right on the top of the buying list over there.
Yeah, we're staying current,
I hear you.
So is that a replacement for your cable, or is that
In
a
addition
satellite?
to, it's 100% satellite up into Elon Musk's satellite network of, what's he going to throw, 1,000 satellites up in the next 2 years or something like that to
And-
do
and
this?
so how
He's
fast is
anticipating
that?
all this new Twitter traffic.
Yep, that's right.
Right?
That way he doesn't have to worry about everybody else. But I mean, it's working. It's working well. You can see the dish moves where it's got coverage, or if it's a little bit of a not coverage, the dish will move automatically to reposition itself.
And what kind of bandwidth do you get out of it?
Right now, I think we're running at 100 from
By
a
the
wireless perspective to my phone. That's what it's saying. I haven't done a hardwire connect to it because they have a special adapter that they want you to use if you're going to hook into Ethernet of any sort.
Kind of going back to the culture and the work at home, and I've always been working home for 20 years, just because I don't like driving, unless I have to. And speaking of Twitter, and not to get political in which way he's going, because that's not what I'm talking about. Twitter, or Elon Musk at this point, is one of the people that says he's going to stand up to the culture of employees get to decide whether you work at home and in the office. That'll be an interesting one to follow, because Apple's went back to work to 3 days a week and keeps backpedaling. And I forget the names of all of them, but I think those huge test cases are going to set the tone for the market overall. We're deep in the shipping industry. A lot of those are run. There's no American flag stevedores, so they're run from overseas companies, and they're getting a lot of push that everyone returns back to work. Of course, the longshoremen, you never could unload a container from home, so they were, But because of the total environment, they don't want it being mixed. I'm seeing the same thing in some larger manufacturing, a little different than someone else was describing earlier. We're seeing where the bulk of the business is in person because it's manufacturing, and that's kind of pushing the office staff to say, your butt needs to be here too. Whether that's for business principles or punitive or easier to manage or optics, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really tell. But I'm starting to see a bigger push back to normal as far as going to work. And then I see a lot of resistance too. So I'll flip-flop back and forth. Be interesting to follow how that goes.
I think if you categorize knowledge worker versus actual hands-on labor, you're going to see that back to work. And of course, the longshoremen probably never really slowed down in the big.
Last year we're real proud of the fact that last year was in the middle of moving dispatch all over and doing all the COVID stuff. There was more traffic through the LA Long Beach ports than any prior year.
Yep. Believe it.
They were backed up. Why?
Yeah, I could give you the reason. One of them was the guy in the White House who didn't even know that when he asked for 24-hour dispatch, he didn't realize he was 8 years late on that requirement that had been in place for 8 years. We still have a trucking problem. And in fact, I was in a meeting yesterday, where they're looking to see if we can help solve that, but I don't think there's any solution until there's some flexibility on California regulations. And remember, diesel trucks get I heard the other day, 4 to 6 miles per gallon. So having to fill up in California for a $2 premium because of our high taxes on gas is a major thing to an independent trucker. I mean,
It's a major thing to me. I paid $148 to fill up the truck yesterday.
yeah. So if you're hauling loads back and forth, and you're saying, and most of them are saying, I don't want to pay your high permit fees. I don't want to pay your high gas fees. I don't want to meet all the other requirements that Newsom put on all at one time. And they're basically saying, and then you have Arizona and Texas basically saying, we're not going to have those fees. And there's a push to intermodal all the traffic out of LA into distribution points outside of California.
Wow.
We
Well,
have a pretty significant exodus here in this state in a lot of ways. And the sad thing is you keep losing your taxpayers.
You lost some big business going too. So,
That's what I meant.
you know,
it
so
was like,
you lost your taxpayers in two ways, not just your personal taxpayers, but that are generating all those other revenues and buying the gas that's generating those gas taxes and all that. But businesses as a whole, it's just counterproductive for them to stay.
right.
It's like New Jersey.
You look at something Rick Scott said, which I don't support completely, but he said fair tax is where everyone pays. The bottom 50% shouldn't be not paying tax. And you start thinking of that concept only in the fact that as the taxpayers, the higher incomes, the businesses leave the state, you can't have that lower margin not contributing now because you've diluted the upper margin. So there's some interesting consequences.
Yeah.
You can't social engineer with taxpayer money when you don't have taxpayers.
Can if you just keep printing it.
But the state can't do that. This is an argument at the state level. The states can't do that. And that's what's interesting. California can only borrow money.
Right.
Or when I'm on the oversight to the local city council, I go, you can't do all the good things you want to do when you're attacking business to pay the tab.
Yep. But it is an interesting point too of, when you think about technology and the work at home of how many companies now have also acquired talent where they were looking for talent, couldn't find talent. The technology that's in the cloud and that enablement of these companies that have started are able to go and get talent from all over the place. They really don't care where it is anymore because the number of touches that you need desk side these days is so significantly reduced. So, that labor pool now is somebody that's, living in California could be working for a company in Michigan, where before pandemic, it was a much lower percentage. So, we even see that, those new companies that are starting up have a whole different labor pool and where they're located in order to do the work that they're hired to perform.
Which brings up an interesting point. I was just talking to a larger MSP, a good friend of mine, who has some people moving out of state, and the fact that he needs to leave people in California because it's his primary state. You're going like, do those people now get a premium? Still similar to a military, right? Do I get more money for staying in the high cost state to kind of keep the lights on, so to speak, right?
well,
I would say yes, but
I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of pieces that are kind of commingling, right? You got workforce, you got power, gas, energy costs, you got, how technology intermixes things, but, physical goods still have to be moved. There's only so much you can do there. I think there's still I think to your point, Keith, there's probably still a truck driver shortage. in terms of the number of people that are physically behind the wheel versus the number of people they need. A lot of things
That's why we
happening
need
out
the
there.
autonomous vehicles to take over, especially in the trucking industry, running them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no stopping.
Wow, I think
Well,
this
you know
truck.
what? Unless I'm wrong, I don't know. I told the story when my son told me my car drove it autonomously and I let go of the steering wheel and it stops. And then I found out in California, and I thought it was Philadelphia, who wanted to get driverless cabs. And these states have this organization that says you can have autonomous driving, but you have to have a driver. And I thought there was like 8 states that actually mandated that already. And that seems to be the trend is, I don't know if that's pushed by labor, safe, I don't even know. But that
Wow.
seems to be.
I want to see how many people are going to sign up to be a drone flyer from their house so that they can deliver by drone.
Yeah.
That sounds very cool.
See that?
And we got to this conversation all because Microsoft is sticky in so many areas.
Yep, that's exactly right.
But it just goes to show, all of these things are so tied in and how that technology is still the base. So going back to that question of where's the value of the IT company, man, you guys have like exploded it in just a very short period of time.
Yeah, well, that's what George is good at.
I like to throw things out there. You never know. Anyway, guys, good chance that Thursday session this upcoming week, which is May 12th. That's actually my birthday. We may,
Wow, happy birthday.
I have a session with Mr. Matt Lee earlier in the day, so I may not be able to do both. So we'll see. We'll let you guys know. Stay tuned. Thanks there, Walter. But stay tuned. MSPinitiative.com. The session will be there. And hey, if you're in the Midwest, we'd love to see you on the Channel Strong tour. And stay tuned. Always
Hey,
new news
George.
coming.
I'll see you in a few short hours, George.
Exactly right. Talk to you, Pete.
All right.
Take it easy, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.